The issue with that is that most people don't even know what a mindset is. They start
So where do we start from?
Well, the mindset is just the set of core beliefs that determine your outlook on life. But most people wouldn't be able to tell you that. Like, oh yeah, I just need to get a growth mindset. I say, okay, what is it? Well, it's just a growth mindset. It's mean I'm all about growth. I'm like, okay, so what are your core fundamental beliefs that then allow you to develop this and let you know that like this is where you're in?
Welcome to the King Dems Podcast, where we share the stories of extraordinary people and dissect hot, relevant topics that shape our world. From visionary leaders to trailblazing creatives, we uncover the mindset, strategy, and grit behind greatness. Whether it's business, culture, or personal growth, we ask the real questions. This isn't just conversation, it's transformation. The King Dems Podcast. Your next breakthrough starts here.
Music licensing reimagined.
We are live, ladies and gentlemen. You are once again welcome to the King Dems Podcast. And today I have with me, fighting out of Phuket, Thailand, by way of Sydney, Australia, Clay, the Navy boy, Moffat. How are you, Clay?
Doing really, really well. And really, really well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Wow, interested. Thank you very much, for coming on board today. And, what excites me the most is that you are also a big fan of the sport I love the most, mixed martial arts.
Yes, sir.
Guys, myself and Clay have been molding the clay on MMA. Before we started talking to you guys, we've had an hour of interesting conversations on MMA. But I'm going to throw Clay under the clay right now. But asking him and putting him on the spot. Clay, do you know what I would ask you? Okay, who are your MMA GOATs, top 5 of all time?
Top 5 of all time?
Mm-hmm. I know GSP is there, somewhere there.
I can't give you, so based on the conversation we had before, I can't say who's number one. I can tell you who the top 5 is they're all in the top 5.
Okay, let's have a method to the madness then. Let's have a criteria. Let's see in terms of the sporting accomplishment and in terms of bringing popularity to the sport globally. Yeah, let's take that. Sporting accomplishment and bringing an eye.
Say sporting accomplishment, you mean like championships won?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, championships, winning streaks, difficult opponents, the run of schedule, yeah, that kind of thing,
I still can't give you a number 1 to 5, but I can tell you a top 5. So
okay,
GSP is probably always going to be there. No matter what, GSP is going to be there, right? So he's got two division championships. He's got welterweight and middleweight. He's got, I'm going to screw this up, don't quote me, 12 or 13 consecutive UFC wins during his prime, and something either 8 or 9 title defenses, right?
I
think he really, really helped turn the page with the respectability of MMA.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the thing that helped it take off. Obviously, what Dana White did with like bringing the show The Contender and really like kind of calm things down. The man we're talking about at length, Anderson Silva, obviously, right? Longest title reign in UFC history. Like, it's insane. I think he had a bigger win streak than GSP. I think it was 16, 17. Don't quote me on that.
I think it was 16 or 15, if I stand to be corrected.
And 10,
man,
9 or 10 title defenses, man, like in middleweight. Like, dude's insane. His striking was crazy, redefined it. His precision, his creativity was next level.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think anyone could have a top 5 and not include John Jones. I think not including John Jones would be very short-sighted. Like, youngest UFC champion ever. 23 years old, man. 23 years old. That's insane.
Yeah, youngest and one of the oldest as well.
True.
This is currently a champion.
Longevity, man. Longevity.
Yeah. Longevity, but he's becoming annoying because we're beginning to think you're ducking Tom Aspinall. Like why?
So while I don't necessarily like his
GSP,
fighting
Anderson Silva, John
Khabib.
Jones.
Khabib.
Oh, Khabib.
100%. Right? Retired undefeated. What else can you say? He had, I think, 3 title defenses, and he dominated all of them. He definitely had a huge
All of
impact.
them.
Like all of the Eastern Bloc countries, so the Russian-speaking countries, the stands, Muslim majority regions, because he brought in a whole new region. So definitely had an impact there. And the last is probably the most notorious of them all, which is Conor McGregor, right?
The notorious, the notorious one.
Like maybe, so he was the first fighter to hold 2 titles, right, simultaneously in different weight classes. That's got to say something. Doesn't mean he's amazing, he's the best in everything, but that says something, right? Simultaneously,
Yeah, but it brought eyes to the sport,
and that's the next thing, right? The other would be in contention is Ronda Rousey. Because she brought in a lot of the female, like she really, really elevated the UFC. But in terms of PPV numbers, McGregor, man,
Yeah.
it's insane.
In the top 10, I think he probably has like 7 or 6 fights in the top 10 pay-per-view numbers. But if we were to have a category for the females, for the women, who would be in the top 5?
So Ronda's obviously up there.
Mm-hmm. Amanda Nunes?
Yeah, she's got to be in there. She's the first female double champ. Same credential as McGregor, right?
Conor McGregor.
So if I'm putting Conor McGregor in there for that, then I got to do the same thing. She smashed Rousey, she smashed Tate, she smashed Holmes, she smashed Cyborg and Shevchenko. And Shevchenko would be the next one that I throw in there. Just dominated, man. 7 title defenses, like one of the most technical, well-rounded fighters ever. Multiple wins over elite competitions. Like just became a role model for perfection in women's MMA. Notable mentions would be Chris Cyborg.
Yeah, sure.
She definitely an element like McGregor. When McGregor got inside Jose Aldo's head and basically just took the fight from Aldo, right? He was so angry that he just wasn't thinking, and McGregor just took it from him. She was also very much in the mental game, destroying opponents before
mental warfare.
Yeah, right. And I think whether you like it or not, she proved that women's MMA could be just as brutal and violent as men's, and technical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, her longevity as well is quite admirable. She's still smashing things up at the PFL.
To round it off, probably always mess up her name. Zhang Weili.
Zhang Weili. I was waiting for that one. She is absolutely good. The queen of the strawweights. But I heard she's trying to get a matchup against Shevchenko. How do you see that going?
First Chinese UFC champion. Just that alone brings China into wanting to watch the UFC.
1.5 billion people.
Right?
Yeah. I think she's a massive influence, and she's a good role model as well. Humility, discipline, consistency, persistence, and resilience as well, coming back from setbacks. It's a very good example for the younger generation to follow. What a tough act. Enough of MMA. Let's talk about Clay. I am the Porter and you are the Clay. Your journey is extraordinary, from Navy weapons tech to author of The Trust Trap. So what was the moment that sparked your shift into behavioral coaching and radical responsibility?
There wasn't one moment. I'd love to say there was. It was like this, you could say it's like there was a moment the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was a series of things that just kept me looking back and looking back and looking back. And what became abundantly clear to me was that I was the common denominator in every single shitstorm that I found myself in. It was me.
So it was more of an evolution than a revolution.
It was an evolution that caused a revolution.
Well, tell me about it.
So the straw that broke the camel's back was when I left the Navy, I then went into oil and gas. And oil and gas, I got paid very well, but I just did not enjoy it. I did not enjoy showing up to work. I did not enjoy being there. It was good money. I enjoyed hanging out with the people there, but I just really wasn't enjoying the work. And on the last job I ever had in oil and gas, I was like, you know what? It'd be great if they just made me redundant, and I just had to go do something else. And so it was like 2013, 2014. OPEC was having this oil price war with the US, so the oil price tanked to don't quote me, around about $30 a barrel. It went from 110 to 30 in a matter of months, and rigs just got stacked globally around the world. There were like mass layoffs, and I happened to get laid off. And it was one of the best things that happened to me. I came back home. I was sitting around, moping around, and my now ex-wife came back, and she's like, "What is your problem? Get up, you lazy bum. Go to work. Go find something to do." And I was like, "All right." And I'd been sitting around because I was kind of sad, and you could say melancholy. I wouldn't say depressed. I was thinking, but there's going to be something else. There's going to be more to this, right? I realized I'd actually been outsourcing like all my outcomes. And so I just got brutally honest about the fact that there's no one coming to save me. And I didn't want someone to come to save me, because the people that would come to save me would be people to get me another job offshore anyway. So I realized that while most people think they need a hug and support, what they really need is a wake-up call, because that's what I needed. I needed a kick in the ass. And so my wife at the time gave me that kick. I was like, all right, this is where we go. And I'd already been on the path of self-development for about the previous 3 years before I got out of oil and gas. I was like, let me just go down this road and explore this and see what happens. And so that's what I did. I just started a business overnight and went from there.
Oh, so it was more of an evolution than a revolution, you would say. But then that incident was like the catalyst that sped up the chain of reaction,
Very much so. Very much so. Like, there was always something wrong, right? Looking back at school, looking back at my time in the Navy, looking back at time in oil and gas, there was always like this thing of like, this is not for me. This is for people of a different nature. I did not belong in the Navy because I don't really do well in very strict authoritarian hierarchies. And that's all the military is. And
that routine, the regimented lifestyle.
That's fine. I'm fine with routine. That's okay. For me, respect and authority is something that I choose to give, not something that is automatically given because you wear a rank on your shoulders. And so then, if I have someone coming to tell me what to do, and from the outside, it looked like they were incompetent, and I was extremely judgmental back then I wouldn't take orders from them. That doesn't work well when you're in the military. If someone outranks you and they give you an order, you have to follow it. So I was like,
obey for complain.
Yeah. Right? So
follow the last order, but yeah, I kind of agree with you. Respect is earned, not demanded. You should always earn your respect, and that's the best form of respect. That is given. But you mentioned that the trust trap was written under intense personal circumstances. So what was going through your mind during that time, and like how did that pressure shape the book?
The trust trap was written in 3 weeks, man. 3 weeks. From the time I started typing to the time it was published, it was 21 days, it was brutal but manageable. And it was manageable because a lot of the work that I've been doing in the most recent years is all about high performance coaching and productivity and amplifying results. and being able to get yourself and set yourself up for a position where you can achieve as much in one day as most people achieve in a month, because you're leveling, like getting into the zone and using that and using strategy and systems in place to do these things. So it kind of was the perfect storm of all this stuff that I've been teaching for almost a decade. Now I can start to utilize and prove that it worked, and it did. But the pressure was, I'm blind in my left eye. I can't see. I lost that vision in 2010. I had 3 operations. 2 of them failed. The first one failed. The second one was a success. I got my vision back. And the third one took my vision away again. So I lost my vision. And the surgery that took that vision away was the surgery I had to have on my right eye. So I was not, the circumstances were different. I hadn't just had 2 surgeries on this eye. So the likelihood of failure was much less. At the same time, there was still a very real chance that it could go that way. And when it came to it, I still wanted to coach. I still wanted to help people. And if things went sideways, and as you can see, I'm talking, I can see you now. So clearly I can see the operation went well. If that didn't go well, the only way that I could see myself being able to coach was in the form of a book, not a course, because then I've got to market the course, etc., but a book. I can put the book out there. If it's really good, people will recommend it. It's less than $20. So it's less than $20. Like, that's not going to kill someone. You know, they're like, okay, yeah, I can spend $20 to see if it's going to help. You know what I mean? So the pressure was, this is not a sales pitch. This is a legacy. This is about being able to help people. This is about making a difference and making an impact. So you need to put something out there that is actually going to help people. Not a lead magnet, not that's going to, hey, look, man, buy my book, and then at the end of the book, I'll sell you $1,000 course so that you can then come into my $15,000 mastermind so that you can get my private one-on-one $100,000 coaching. No. The book by itself had to stand alone as a book that could help people and transform. And so I poured everything that I thought was the most useful framework from things that I had learned from my mentors and from working with thousands of people into this thing, so that what I'd learned over the last 15 years just didn't die. And it had room to grow on its own.
You know, it's quite interesting the challenges you've actually faced. Different people go through different kinds of tests. And of course, you know, speaking of the one eye thing, you know, it reminds me of Michael Bisping, you know, of the UFC, and how you have to be resilient to see be a champion in life. Michael Bisping became, you know, a champion in the UFC with just single vision.
Mm-hmm.
And for people that don't have an idea, that actually significantly affects your depth perception as a person. So you need to work twice as hard as a regular person, especially when it comes to physical tasks, even with the mental tasks as well. And it does have a very significant mental pressure on you as a person, because you know that you have to now put in twice the effort into everything that you do. So what was more challenging for you? Was it the mental aspect or the physical aspect?
Because the mental aspect is a physical aspect. Mentally, your psychology is being tested, but your brain has to develop new neural pathways and has to develop the ability to start reading and making these judgments on depth perception. Like, I've got a couple of good friends here in Phuket, and they play paddle. Do you know what paddle is? It's like mini tennis court thing with walls, and you can hit the ball and bounce. It's kind of like squash on a small little court. When it comes to fast-moving objects coming towards me and me trying to hit them back, it could be the most.
You need that hand-eye coordination.
And I was like, and it just goes straight past like I've never played before in my life. And my mate's like, what happened? And he's like, oh yeah, your eye, right. So we ended up figuring out a strategy where I stand at the net. And so if I don't have to go to my side and in front of me, I stand there and I can volley the ball back and get it in. So that's how we ended up playing the game. But
Wow.
it makes a huge difference. And the mental processing takes up a notch. The way that your brain processes takes up a notch. Physically, there are things and limitations that come in. But the limitations were there even when I was in the oil and gas field, right? And so I'm trying to fix these massive valves, or we're pressure testing with 30,000 PSI, or we're doing this change out with a couple of ton chain blocks and moving things and shifting things. And you're trying to line up threads on a bolt and you can't see with your left eye, but it's around this corner. You need to see with your left eye to try and get in there. And so now you got to come up with like some mirror and try and build this thing. So, I mean, it was just, you have to figure it out.
Necessity is the mother of invention,
Necessity, that's 100% right.
Mm-hmm. You always have to figure it out. That fighting spirit, I see it in you. And you live in Phuket, Thailand, and Thailand is very, very famous for its Muay Thai.
Oh, yeah.
Most MMA guys that know what they're doing at some point in time would always come to Phuket to train, especially with Tiger Muay Thai. So
Right.
tell me, how the interactions with these MMA fighters, has actually helped your mental game, helped, your fighting spirit, and who are the guys you've enjoyed working with the most?
So when it comes to the fighting spirit, that was more ingrained from my dad.
Yeah.
So my dad just doesn't give up. Never has. I was very fortunate to grow up in a household like that. You know Jocko Willink?
Jocko Willink, that name sounds familiar. Tell me about the person.
So he's got a book called Extreme Ownership. He's a former
Extreme
Navy
Ownership.
SEAL, right? And he was the Navy SEAL team leader in Iraq and Afghanistan and ran a lot of ops over there. And he's got this saying that no matter what someone would say to him, even if they came to him with a problem, he'd just say, good. That was it, right? It kind of shaped. So people come up to him and like, I'm going to tell you this thing. I know exactly what you're going to say. You're just going to say good. And he's like, good. And so it didn't matter, right? And so these people, it shifted the accountability so that they go figure it out.
Mm.
Growing up, my dad, whenever I approached him with a problem, would say, you're lucky. Some people would kill to have the problem you've got right now. You're lucky. And so I got this thing stuck into my head that no matter what happens, no matter what comes my way, you're lucky. So when it came to working with the fighters, there were some people I'm still not allowed to talk about because of NDAs, and other fighters, it really depended on where they came from in life. And I don't necessarily mean the country, but the fighting spirit would typically be there. Most of the fighters, and this is possibly going to sound rude, but I don't mean it to be, most of the fighters are broke. Until you get super famous,
Yeah,
most fighters
exactly.
come
Very
from
true.
nothing, right? And the other element is most fighters, until they're at the top level, don't care about mindset. They're not interested in mindset. None of them are interested in mindset because they want to get their skills right. They want to get their techniques right. And they don't realize that the two work in tangent with each other. I need to become the best striker and the best grappler. Like, that's great. You also need to make sure that your mind's in the right place so that as you're developing these skills, you're coming from the right place. You're not overworking yourself. You're not overtraining yourself. And you're not pushing yourself into this pit. Tim Grover in Relentless talks about how the Black Mamba was always trying to do just one more and just one more and just one more. And that's why in his mind, Jordan was a better player because Jordan would stop when he was told to stop. Whereas Kobe wanted to be seen better as Jordan, so he pushed himself further and he didn't need to. Now, that's not to say that they're not both awesome players. They are. And that's not to take anything away from how skillful he is. It's a difference between knowing and understanding the level that you're at and then also paying attention. Okay, like, do I really need to do this? Is this essential? Is this actually going to boost my skill level? Is this actually going to level me up? Or am I just working myself based out of fear that I'm not actually the best yet and that I haven't surpassed this guy.
You know, and that's why I love to tell people it's more important to work smart than to work hard. And activity doesn't necessarily generate productivity.
Oh,
You
no.
know, everybody has a breaking point. So it doesn't make sense to stretch yourself beyond your breaking point because you would need recovery.
Absolutely.
So if you stretch yourself beyond the breaking point, you will spend unnecessary time on recovery.
The
So
thing
while it's good,
most people don't understand is that recovery is the key to peak performance. You can't have peak performance without recovery. Like, it's a symbiotic relationship. If you're just pushing out, and doing minimal recovery, then the amount of energy you have to push into the next one becomes diminished. So you start getting diminished returns, diminished results. And people that are hungry, that haven't worked on their mindset, always feel that there's not enough, so they need to push more. That's not true. Not that they haven't worked on their mindset, but haven't got their mindset dialed in. That are running out of a fear, like they're not enough, or they need to do this because they're not sure if they're going to win, or they can't know if they're doing this. And it becomes massively problematic. And that doesn't matter whether we're talking about sports, whether we're talking about business, whether we're talking about a relationship. That's in every single segment of your life.
so let's talk about patterns. Like, you know, why do you believe most people are stuck in trust loops they don't even realize?
Because that's so simple, man. People don't even know what trust is. People have this Disney fairy tale idea of value. They lock it in. So what happens in the brain, because as a mechanism for the brain to survive and to kick into gear, what really happens is the brain is lazy, right? Or you could say it's efficient. Either one, they both mean the same thing in this context. It likes to learn something as fast as it can and turn it into an automatic pattern, so it doesn't need to think about it, so it doesn't need to consume energy, because it needs to conserve energy. Because evolutionary speaking, from a neuroscientific standpoint, we need to make sure that we remember where food is, we remember where calories are, so that we can survive. Now, 10,000 years ago, can't just walk down to the supermarket and go get some groceries, right? You got to remember where the mango tree is. You got to remember where the animals go at the water hole. You got to remember these things so that you can survive. Whereas nowadays we don't have that. But from the evolutionary side of things and how our brains still work, that still plays a massive role. So what happens is people develop, okay, we've been friends for 5 years, right? And we're talking and everything's going on. And then I'm like, you know what? King Dems, perfect. I trust this guy. He's a trustworthy guy. No disrespect. That's false. It doesn't mean that you're intentionally going to try and screw me over. But the second I label you as trustworthy, you get put in a bracket. And that bracket means I'll ignore the red flags that come up. And a red flag doesn't mean you're screwing me over. A red flag means pay attention, something different is happening. And that's the difference. A lot of people think, oh, it's a red flag. They're deceiving me. They're trying to screw me over, man. Like, no. Pump the brakes, dude. It's not like that at all. What it means is something different is happening. Pay attention. That's it. And then when you start paying attention to what's happening and you can see a divergence, you can start to figure out, okay, like, is their incentive still aligned with me? And that's what trust is. Trust is the assurance of a mutually beneficial outcome. The classic example is right now, at this point in time, it is beneficial for you to host me on your show because you believe I can add value to your listeners. Right now, it is beneficial for me to be on your show because then I can talk and I can get more people to understand the bullshit that they tell themselves, how to break out of it, and to move forward. Right? But that's it. It goes both
Absolutely.
ways. You see what I
You
mean?
know, yeah.
So I can trust,
Symbiotic relationship.
right? I can trust that this is in your best interest. So we're both going to show up and give 100%. Now,
Show up and show out.
if in our conversation beforehand, you're like, well, man, this dude's really weird. Maybe we should reschedule. Like, I'll get back to you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying you would, But there would be this thing like, I'm not sure if this is actually right for my audience. Like there could be something wrong here. There's something that's not going on. So you go, you know what? I'll go ahead with the show, but at the end of it, you're like, okay, this is not right for me. Like we need to change that, and I'll contact the guy and let him know, because it's not in your best interest. So when it comes to trust and labeling someone, this is a trustworthy person, that label gets stuck. That stuck label gets put there because the brain doesn't want to spend energy consuming all this new data that's coming in that is different to the label that you've attached. So now you're getting cognitive dissonance coming in. It's like, oh, no, they're a good person. They're a good person. They wouldn't do this. So then you start ignoring red flags. You start justifying why they wouldn't do it to yourself. And then boom, you get betrayed, which you didn't. You just weren't paying attention. And now you're like, I don't know why it happened. Well, I mean, the 3 months leading up to it where you're getting all these signals telling you that it's happening is exactly why it happened.
Trust. You talk about trust, you talk about betrayal, right? And betrayal is closely linked to the breach of trust, right? So you also talk about the behavioral blind spots. So would you say that trust isn't a feeling, it's a pattern? And can you break that down for the audience?
I would absolutely say trust is not a feeling. I mean, yes and no. So you can get a feeling that things are right. And that I would argue is like trust as a feeling. Does that make sense? So like I can feel that this conversation and their intention that you have is good for me. And I can tell that by the way that you're showing up. I can tell that by the way you're interested. I can tell that by the body language. I can tell that by how you're focusing on what I'm saying. I can tell that by how you're pivoting your questions. I can tell that by how you're nodding as you're going along. I can tell that because your blink rate is slowing down because you're paying attention to the words I'm saying. You're being absorbed in what I'm saying. So there's multiple things you can start to pay attention to. Now, when you start talking about betrayal and trust being linked, I do not believe in betrayal. It doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist in my world is because I don't label people into this trust bracket. I pay attention. And it has taken me a long time to get my brain to continuously pay attention to people, because you're pushing back on its design by nature, which is to like conserve energy and not do that. But I've also spent a lot of time training in body language and behavior profiling so that I can notice like this is someone's baseline. They're deviating from their baseline. Okay, what's going on? Okay, do I need to pay attention? So that before it even comes to a culmination of a betrayal incident, I'm already aware that that's the direction they're heading. And so I can cut it off and say, look, I don't think this is going a direction we need to go. We need to move.
So you're saying that trust is not a feeling, it's a pattern.
Yes.
So why do even the smartest of people miss out on the red flags in relationships, business, or leadership?
Red flags don't look red until you've been burned. They seem like inconsistencies against the idea that you've created in your head about the illusion of who this person was, past tense, not who they are showing up as right now. People get attached to the idea of the person, their perception, their projection of that person. And when they get attached to that, it doesn't matter how smart you are, because intelligence doesn't mean awareness. And smart people, I call it smart people syndrome. It's not actually syndrome, so we're clear, right? But smart people often rationalize faster and better than anyone else. So when the gut's like, hey, Dems, something's off here, bro. Wake up, pay attention. You're like, nah, man, like it's okay because of this and this and this. And logically, you perfectly fill this amazing story. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly why they're doing it. And then boom, you fall off a cliff. You're like, what? How did that happen? That doesn't make any sense. Makes perfect sense. You rationalize something. Your gut's trying to indicate that something's going off, but your brain is going, no, we're good. This is safe. We've got all these other things in place. We've got these checks and balances here. Everything's fine.
So you're saying even the smartest people wouldn't identify the red flags. So what is
No, hold on. No, not they can't identify the red flags, that they ignore them or justify them. And so the red flag doesn't become red until they've crashed and burned, because they already ignored and justified to themselves that it wasn't a red flag, even though it was. That's why hindsight's 2020, right? They did know.
absolutely?
Take an example of where you've been betrayed. And we're not talking like the worst thing in your life, but a friend didn't show up, someone ghosted you or something like that.
Mhm.
Tell me that there were not signs before that you're like, oh no, it's okay. Tell me.
Yeah, apparently.
And tell me that did not happen. And I'll be like, okay, I'm wrong. But I can tell.
Apparently, I can only smell bullshit from a mile away.
And that's the point, right? Most people can, but they've conditioned themselves to ignore it. And that's the issue.
This brings me to remember something. In communication, I pay more attention to body language than your verbal language. You
Right?
could be telling, and that's why I like video calls. I like one-on-one communication because your body language does not lie. Your tongue might be telling me something, your mouth will be telling me something, or your body's telling me another thing, and of course that gives me information to process in order to understand, okay, where you're at with what you're saying or what it is really that you want. But I think a lot of people in this age and time do not pay attention to body language. I like for you to touch on that, and link it back to, the issue with trust and identifying patterns.
Sure. So that's pretty simple. I've got the system that I call, and it's called the snitch protocol. And I say everybody is a snitch, meaning every body on the planet, every human being's body is going to snitch on them.
Mm.
So I can say whatever I want to, and exactly like you said, the body's giving me away. The body's gone behind my back and it's snitching me to the other person. And you can't escape it. And even if you try to like lock it down, because of the cognitive load that's going on, something else is going to snitch somewhere else on you. Like you can't beat it. It just happens. So when you become attuned to what to pay attention for, and you mentioned something like, oh, the mouth is saying one thing, I'm like, okay, let me dive into that a bit further. It's not the mouth, because the mouth is actually part of the body. The words are saying one thing, but the mouth can also actually be very indicative of what's going on and what the person isn't actually wanting to say, right? So there's something called the homunculus, which is a really weird disfigured drawing that pays attention to sensory input and motor input. And so it redraws the body in a way that shows where all the sensory input and the motor input is. And what it shows is like the hands, I'm going to mess up the numbers. The hands are around about 7 times larger than they would be prospectively. The legs are like 0.2. The feet are about two or three times the size. The ears are about 1.5 times. The lips are a bit like, it shows it disproportionately because these are the areas where a lot of the energy goes. And you can start telling these things, right? So you can start telling like subtle mouth movements, right? So micro expressions, biting the lips, and then depending on what biting, pursing lips, so pulling your lips in, biting lips like this, sticking your tongue in your cheek. All these things meet certain requirements. And when you start grouping these clusters together after someone's responding or before they're about to talk to you, you can start to get an idea of whether like they're holding on something, that they're repressing something, they're holding something back, whether there's more tension and more stress in what they're trying to come across, whether they're closed off, and that is a barrier gesture, right? I'm crossing the center of my body. I'm like, now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's something bad or deceptive. But when it's clustered together in a certain way, responding to certain questions, and your brain picks up on these things, but you don't have any training in it. So you're like, oh, I'm getting this message, but I have no idea what this message means. So my brain's going to logic through all what it does know. And what it does know is that this person's a trustworthy person. They've never screwed me over before. They'd never do that. Why would they do that now? So this message that you're getting gets ignored. So the patterns are there, but if you're not attuned to what patterns to look for, to start paying attention, and the biggest thing that most people screw up when they start going into behavior profiling body language is they forget about baseline. And you have to baseline every person, all the time, every interaction. Now you'll start to form a relative baseline. The more you start to hang out with people, the more you start to connect with people, you'll start to understand that their baseline will change depending on their emotional state, but you'll start to clock those things and have general ideas of what their baseline is. But for the most part, most people forget about that. And like, oh, yeah, you're sitting there with your arms crossed, you're being defensive. Like, I'm sitting in front of air conditioner, it's cold, I want to warm myself up, get over it. But they'll take this one little snippet and they'll like, oh, that's what it means. No.
Yeah, and I've said this before on the podcast. In communication, two things are important: the content and the context.
Always.
Yeah. So, same thing in body language.
Yep.
Content and the context. In what context are you doing that? But that is where understanding of human psychology comes in. It's not just a bucket list of expressions and saying this expression means this. That expression might mean something different on a rainy day, on a cold day, on a warm day. And also studying the tone and the cadence of a person's voice is important. The tone and cadence, gives out, basic emotions like fear, like greed,
Oh, yeah. Very much.
excitement, anger. Like the tone and cadence would always, communicate those. But it takes, someone who is highly trained in communication to be able to clock those things. And, yourself and myself, I've done a great job in studying communication to quite a high degree in order to be able to understand these deep things. They don't just, teach you these things in school. You need to practice them over time and do your research. Yeah, over time.
I think to get good at them, it takes time.
Yeah,
But to
it takes time.
understand them and start seeing them, you can see that very
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, quickly.
Like it's like anything, right? You can get a little bit of information, learn some things really quickly, and start to notice something like, oh, that's cool. It's like a party trick. I can do this cool thing. Like, yeah. And then to get really good at it takes commitment, takes consistency, and takes effort. Like anything, right?
Repetition breeds mastery.
Kind of.
Yeah, consistent over time.
But not even consistent over time. So, like, if you're consistently practicing something, but you don't fully understand what that thing is, then you're consistently practicing the wrong thing, and that will bring mastery in the wrong use of the thing that you're practicing. So
Yeah, but you need that innovation over time, and improvement in strategy and open-mindedness to learning. A lot of people have a fixed mindset, not a growth mindset.
very much so.
Very important to have a growth mindset, and when you have a growth mindset, it leads you on that path of learning. And a very important part of the growth mindset is having an open mind and being curious and being hungry to learn.
The issue with that is that most people don't even know what a mindset is. They start
So where do we start from?
Well, the mindset is just the set of core beliefs that determine your outlook on life. But most people wouldn't be able to tell you that. Like, oh yeah, I just need to get a growth mindset. That I need. I say, okay, what is it? Well, it's just a growth mindset. It's mean I'm all about growth. I'm like, okay, so what are your core fundamental beliefs that then allow you to develop this and let you know that like this is where you're in? And so we're clear, like the mindset that you bring is also going to fluctuate depending on your state. You could be very well in a growth mindset when everything's going great. Yet when your nervous system's triggered and you start going into collapse and your dorsal vagal system starts taking over your body and shutting everything down, your prefrontal cortex stops getting energy, your amygdala starts firing up and everything starts firing a million miles an hour, then you could very much be going into a very closed mindset very, very quickly. Now, does that mean that you're always in a closed mindset? No.
No.
But if you went through abuse or you went through some kind of trauma and you're easily triggered, you could be more easily able to go back there and less resilient to stress and less tolerant to it. So that means the impact and the volatility of your life is increased. So there's so many factors, man. Context is king. Context is king.
How you clock that, there's so many moving variables, and we have internal variables, we have external variables.
Yeah.
But people underestimate the impact of the external variables, because the external variables can sometimes be superimposed.
I think the external variables can be even more impactful than the internal. Like, look at when you're growing up, did your parents restrict you from playing with certain kids? Or did they let you play with
Definitely.
anyone you wanted? No, of course they. And why? Why did they do that? Not because they've studied psychology, not because they've got a PhD in psychology and neuroscience, because they know that the circle of influence will start to shape you socially, it will start to shape your behaviors, it will start to shape your belief in yourself. It will start to shape the activities that you're going to start to enjoy, what you might be tempted into doing, good things or bad things, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they know these things. Fundamentally, as human beings, we know these things. Fundamentally, as human beings, we know that the standard of your education and the way you're treated in school and how you show up in school and the way you approach school is going to have a massive influence on your life and a massive influence on the direction of your life. But people think that, okay, I'm independent of my environment. No, you're a product of your environment.
Absolutely. And that's why when I see people who try to ignore that external factor and say, oh, you are the architect of your own fortune, I'm like, excuse me, what are you saying? Yeah, you shape your own life. I'm like, excuse me?
To a degree, sure. But it's like when people say, I'm a
Like
self.
it's absolutely your own in your own hands. And the most annoying ones are the ones that say I'm a self-made billionaire. Will you shut up?
That's not what I was about to say. Really? So no one gave you a chance. No one gave you an opportunity. No one ever helped you out at all along the way. Maybe, yes, okay, it was your idea. You put forward the grunt work. You did majority. But to say that you did absolutely everything completely and entirely by yourself and you had absolutely no help, okay, so you were just a magical apparition that appeared in the world and your parents actually did nothing for you, like you don't exist, they don't exist, you like, yeah.
In the voice of Conor McGregor, who the F is the guy?
Exactly.
You talking rubbish. I wish I had an Irish accent right now. Because the best way to address this kind of people is an Irish accent, You need to give them a dress down. The Irish are very, very good at attacking people, and giving you a proper dress down. Like, what are you saying? What are you talking about? You're chatting BS. But it's fine, the world has enough space for everybody. Variety is the spice of life. Different strokes for different folks. You've been privileged to work with high performers, right?
Yep.
And what's one betrayal they commit most often against themselves?
A betrayal that they commit most often against themselves. The biggest thing, it's tough to say. It's really tough to say because there was three things that come to mind immediately, but they all actually stem from one thing, and they trade peace for performance. And by trading peace for performance, that means they break their own boundaries, they ignore their own instincts, they sacrifice the alignment to win the game, and then at the end of it, they wonder why am I feeling so hollow? Even though they're winning, right, and that they're doing the thing that they said they wanted to do, and they're achieving the thing they wanted to achieve, is empty. And so they've abandoned themselves and they've betrayed themselves in the name of success.
Sacrifice.
So I would go slightly different. There is a difference between, so I definitely made some sacrifice in the 3 weeks of writing the book. I sat in front of the computer for 14, 15 hours a day. I didn't really do much else. The other thing I did was play with my kids. Like went in the pool, played, chilled, spent some time with my missus. I also still did my coaching calls, even though I couldn't see the people on the computer screen. I still rocked up and did the coaching calls so I could click buttons and kind of get online. I would say that I, in that period, made some level of sacrifice. Though I wouldn't necessarily say, in the grand scheme of things, that I have sacrificed anything.
So do you think the sacrifice is worth it?
Do I think that specific sacrifice was worth it?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like what ended
Okay.
up coming out of that was absolutely, like, I love it. I'm super, super happy with what I've managed to come out on the other side. I mean, that was a very, very visceral deadline for me. And that just put the pedal to the metal even more and like really ramped things up. So yeah, I am.
So do you know what we just did indirectly? We just did something in accounting called a cost benefit analysis.
Yep.
So in accounting, in order to make a business decision, one of the major simplistic models is perform a cost benefit analysis. What is the cost to you versus what is the benefit? If the costs outweighs the benefit, then the sacrifice is not worth it.
Of course.
But if the benefits outweigh the costs, right, then it makes sense. So a lot of people chase vanity, you know, say revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king.
Yeah.
So a lot of people chase vanity metrics. And when you finally achieve that vanity metric, there's a hole because
Yep.
the costs probably outweighs the benefit. So I was speaking with somebody yesterday, and then they were like, "Oh, would you do this project?" And I was like, "No, I'm not interested." And he was like, "Oh, you should make this and this and this for me." And I'm like, "I am not interested. Why? It's not worth my time. Because the time I'm going to put into that is actually not worth what I'm going to benefit from it." So thank
Right.
you.
That's smart.
But a lot of people just see the top line. Just the, oh, this is what I stand to get. But what are you putting in to get that?
So for me, with regards to the book specifically, because that's what you asked about, I could not have told you before the operation whether it was worth it or not.
Mhm.
Because while I wrote the book and while I had people reading the book while I was writing, and the feedback I got was fantastic, until it went out into the world and people started reading it and they started giving me feedback. Like, I can say, yeah, I've written a great book, all I want. At the end of the day, the audience is going to be the judge on whether I've written a great book. Now, I also
The
know,
judge, the jury, and
Yep.
the executioners.
oh yeah, I'm also acutely aware that there's going to be some miserable, grumpy, disgruntled human being that is going to open up the book and going to ignore the fact that it says, like, this is not for the faint of heart, that it's raw, it's unfiltered, it's in your face, it's confronting. And they're going to go in there anyway. They're going to buy the book and then they're going to go, oh, yeah, this author is rude. He uses profanity. And this is not what I expect from a published author. This is disgusting and rate me 1 star. I'm well aware that's going to happen at some point. So be it. That's fine. So I don't say that it's successful because it's being well received. I say that it's successful because what I've put in, some of the feedback I'm getting, I wrote it so that it would feel like I was coaching the person reading it.
Mhm.
And I have got that feedback multiple times from people who I have coached. And so, like, okay, so I have written, I've achieved my target. Does that make sense? It's like,
And you know what your target is actually. It's just one word: impact.
exactly. Oh yeah, massively. That's exactly what it is. To make a dent
So
and help people. That's 1,000,000%.
as long as you achieve that positive impact, you're okay. You're good. You're Gucci. Let's talk about the nervous system.
Sure.
And I'm really glad that you are into combat sports. You know, what role does the nervous system play in sabotaging our decision making? You see that
Well,
happening. You
it's
see
funny.
that happening in combat sports time and time and time again.
You do and you don't, right? This is the thing, because the nervous system can be conditioned. So you can condition it. And like when you're getting punched, like to shift out of combat sports, you look at stunt guys, right? Stunt guys are actively falling down and smashing their face onto a table. Something that you or I, if we were to do, we would like pull out last second because we haven't conditioned our nervous system that it's okay. We haven't learned the process. Likewise, for someone that's never done any MMA or any fighting or any martial art that actually does full contact, when they, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
And get
Thank you, Mike
punched in the
Tyson.
face. Yeah.
Right? But until you've been in that, you're not going to know. But once you get into that and you've gone the rounds and you've done the time, then your nervous system starts to respond differently. Will it still go into fight or flight? Yes, but it's definitely going to go more into fight than it is into flight until you're getting wailed on, and then it's definitely in flight. Like you see the guy running away from the other guy chasing him in an MMA ring, he's completely in flight. You know, he's like, I'm out of here. Like, this is not a place to be, right? So you see a very visceral response of it. And you also see collapse in a lot of the MMA fights where the guy's just like hunkered down in the fetal position. Like, okay, I'm just going to hold on. I'm just going to hold on. I'm not going to move. Like they're completely immobilized. They're collapsed. So you see that breadth of it. You also see a lot of the fight. The thing is, when your nervous system is in survival mode, your decisions are not going to be rational. They're purely reactive. And to step out of MMA, when that happens, because it's reactive and because it's in survival, you'll latch on to trusting the wrong person just because it's going to make you feel more safe. Even though your gut's screaming like, no, get away from this, is a huge red flag, stop, get out of it. Even though you repeat the same cycle over and over and over again, because your body is trying to resolve the past. It's not assessing the present. It's making assessments based on what has happened. So there were times when I've worked with people. I'll use a specific example because it's very visceral and to the point. I worked with a group of women who all came from a similar region, and it was just abundantly clear because they all came to me with a very similar message. He only hits me because he loves me. When I dug into this, what started to come out was very obvious. They had watched their mum get pummeled by their husband. I mean, pummeled. And then she would come up to them and say, it's okay, darling, he only does it because he loves me. So now this child is getting normalized by the mother, even though the mother's nervous system is getting battered. She doesn't want the daughter to be afraid, so she thinks she's doing the right thing. But really, she's actually teaching her, hey, this is okay. It's all right to get bashed by your husband. This is perfectly normal. So that becomes familiar. So the nervous system starts to think that that is safe because safety to the nervous system is familiarity. It's not necessarily that it is safe. It's not necessarily that it's good for you. It's just what's familiar and what you're used to and what you're conditioned to.
No wonder
So,
they say familiarity breeds contempt.
oh yeah,
Acceptable in any way, shape, or form. It's crazy.
I guess it depends on who you ask, man. Like, this is the world we live in. And there were things that I was so naive to before I became a coach. And then when I first became a coach, I'm like, I'm going to try and change the world. I'm going to change everyone. I'm going to do all these things. And then the more I started to learn as a coach and the more experience I've started to get, I'm like, no, I'm going to help the people that actually want my help and that are ready to change, because everything else is just wasted energy. And I'm trying to put into these people, and my intention is pure, but I'm also, as they say, I'm putting my fish in their pond. Like, let me show you. I'm going to show you how to do things. I'll put all my fish in your pond, and then, but they don't want that. They're not ready for it. It's not doing them any service. In fact, it's doing them a disservice. So, yeah.
We can lead the horse to the stream. We cannot force it to drink. But, you know, speaking of your work, like, how do you help people go from disillusionment to clarity after a breach of trust?
Well, first thing is this: stop making it about the other person. Stop saying that you were betrayed. Stop saying that they betrayed you. The incident happened. But the real work is figuring out where you ignored yourself, why you rationalized it, how you abandoned yourself, and how you overrode your own signals in the first place. Because until, and I mean this, until you take full responsibility, total ownership, without blaming yourself, you'll get a sense of clarity that just lights you up. And then that is where your power starts to grow from. And a lot of people really get confused with blame and responsibility. Like they're the same thing, like they're completely different things. Blame is about finding fault. Responsibility is about taking ownership and moving forward.
Ownership. So what do most feel good self-help books, right, or coaches get completely wrong about healing and growth?
They sell comfort. They sell
Comfort.
ideas, comforting strategies. Healing's not a vision board. It's not, what are those things called? It's not getting a Tibetan bowls massage with sound therapy. It is putting a gun to the head of the version of you that let the bullshit slide in the first place and saying
Get
it's enough.
comfortable being uncomfortable.
Very much so. Because it's only by becoming comfortable with this new unfamiliarity that is way better for you that you can even move forward in the first place. It's accountability, not affirmations. Growth is not about cute. It's not about, oh, it's nice. It's not about snuggles and cuddles. It's disruptive. And disruptive doesn't necessarily mean painful, but disruptive usually means uncomfortable, especially from the nervous system standpoint, because it's unfamiliar.
So are you able to walk us through a client transformation story where radical responsibility changed everything?
So a good buddy of mine, he's a long-standing friend. He knew that I was out of the oil and gas and I was doing this kind of stuff. And he'd seen the transformation I made in myself. He's like, hey, man, I don't know if you can help me. I've just found out that my wife cheated on me and like, I want to do everything I can get her back. I'm like, okay. Like, that's what you want to do? No worries. So he flew over to Thailand to come stay with me for a week. And before we started working, I said, I'm not going to do anything today. Take the night to think about this. I'm asking you one question and then you tell me. And the question was very simple. Do you want me to teach you how to get her back? Or do you want me to help you become the man that she wants to get back with? And that even if she doesn't, you're good to go. He came back to me the next day. He's like, option 2, perfect. So we went through this process about uncovering all the things that he had done that could have contributed to that. At the same time, let go of all the attachment to her being the mechanism, the driver for his happiness. Because she applied a lot of shame to him that he had done all these things wrong and he wasn't there for her and he took this away from her and he did this. Once he saw the pattern and once he started to see himself for who he really was and he took back that ownership, he rebuilt everything from the ground up. I am actually going to be going to his wedding in November to his new missus, who he's super happy with. He's going to have kids with. They've got the dog, the whole family, partridge in a pear tree, white picket fence, blah, blah, blah. Like, he's super happy. And this chick is really, really, really good for him. Like, really good for him. And you can see in the way he talks, the way he carries himself, the way he approaches life is just totally different. He didn't heal. He completely upgraded. He's a totally different person now.
Interesting stuff. You know, sometimes people tend to force marriages to work and tend to see themselves in a different light that they shouldn't see themselves, right? Just in order to satisfy another person. And I think sometimes cultural nuances also contributes to this. So, for example, in Africa, if you marry to somebody, society would view you in a very, very demeaning way if you decide to pull out of that marriage.
Right.
So, you get to see a lot of people putting up a facade, living in an unhappy marriage and just, sticking up to it. But I ask how many years do you want to live, in this life
Yep.
to live unhappy? So what's your take on people, that force relationships even when it's not working out? What's your general advice to people out there?
All right, so I'm going to circle back to what we talked about before. Context is king. So you give me a specific context, I'll give you a specific answer. In terms of the general advice, it's really going to depend, because it's going to depend on the person's values. It's going to depend on their culture, right? Because culturally, they could be shunned and shamed for getting a divorce, and then they get disowned by their family. And do they really want that? So there's a balance and a mix that comes into these kind of things and comes into the equation. For the most part, if I had to give general advice, because that's what you're asking for, I would say it's pretty simple. You could go through a process of doing something like a cost benefits analysis. But the thing with cost benefits analysis, when it is not about figures, it's about emotions, you don't know how it's going to turn out on the other side until you pull the trigger. You can't ever know. But what you can do is you can hypothesize. And so you can go ahead and break it down. And the biggest thing I would see is, are you unhappy because you're not showing up 100%? Or are you unhappy because the other person isn't showing up 100%? Because to make a relationship work, it's not about I give 50% and you give 50% and combined we have 100%. No, I have to give 100% of myself and you have to give 100% of yourself. And if you're continuing, actually, truly, honestly giving 100% of yourself to the relationship and the other person is not, and you believe that, speak to them. Don't just go ahead and make a decision, speak to them. And if they say that they truly are and they believe they are, then you need to have another conversation about, okay, what am I expecting from this relationship and what are they expecting from the relationship? If that's completely mismatched, go different ways.
I like what you said. It feels like you eavesdropped on a conversation with a friend who actually did ask me for some relationship advice recently. You are an eavesdropper. And I'm going to throw my stress ball from London, England, and it's going to hit you in Phuket, Thailand. There you go. What is one practical tool that our listeners, can start using today to calibrate who and what they trust?
Baseline. Learn to baseline people. And baselining people means paying attention to the words they use, paying attention to their standard body movements. And so we're clear, if you're very familiar, and so the thing about betrayal is it only comes from people you trust. Because to be betrayed, you have to trust the person in the first place, right? So you're never going to be betrayed by someone you don't trust because you didn't trust them, so they can't betray you. It's kind of expected. But with that means it's going to be people close to you. And if it's people close to you, then they're going to have certain behaviors that they routinely show up with. And you will notice trends. And so you will start to notice a deviation. So if you start to notice a deviation, say something. So in sales training, right, they say the best way to not get an objection or to avoid objections is to not get them. That's the best way. People are like, what the hell does that mean? It's very simple. When you notice someone, so I'm talking to you and I say something and you're like, and I do nothing. I just keep blurting out my pitch for the next 15 minutes. Well, I saw something that was a deviation in your behavior and I didn't say something. But I could have said something, said, Dems, what's going on there, man? Like, have you got something? Can you share something? It looked like something I think about something.
Do you want me to share something? So I was just remembering the announcement on TFL Transport for London. It says if you see something that doesn't seem right, please speak to staff or call British Transport Police on 61016. See it, say it, sort it.
But that's the thing. Like, that is obviously the whole terrorism prevention thing, right? This is for your stability and your sanity. And this is what will give you that. Because I think people are so scared of looking weird or looking insecure or looking strange or looking like they care too much. I mean, you can throw a million reasons and one of them's going to be there. But if you actually want to have quality relationships, you should really give a shit about the person. And when things seem like they're going a different way, just say something. And if they say, no, it's nothing, don't worry about it. But they keep doing it. And you're like, look, this is how you used to show up. You used to do this, 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 this. You're now doing this, 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 this. Like, is there something I'm missing? Can you tell me what's going on? I know I'm not being paranoid because I'm seeing a different behavior. And if this is just you've done some work and you've changed some things, great. But I need to have the conversation about it. But the biggest thing you touched on before, and it's one of the things that I usually have as a go-to, always trust the behavior. Words can shift and shape at any point in time. And if their words do not match their behavior, then you know there is something off and it's time to pay attention.
Yeah, when you have that mismatch between the verbal language and the body language, something is up. And yeah, but with more experience, in life, there are two ways of, asking probing questions, in an indirect way that would, elicit the responses
Oh, yeah.
that typically people would want to hide or cover up. Yeah. So there are skillful ways, and like you said, practice, and learning, learning new skills, over time. Well, so how does someone stop outsourcing their sanity, and finally own their outcomes without spiraling into self-blame?
Simple. Responsibility isn't blame. It's your leverage point. Simple as that. If you can get to the point of an understanding in your belief systems, in your mindset, right, the core beliefs, right, that you're not the villain, that you're the solution, and that when you stop waiting for closure, when you stop waiting for apologies, for someone else to validate your pain, and you own your part, not to punish yourself, but to position yourself, you step into this powerful mechanism. You take back control of the car. You're now driving down. You're not in the passenger seat with some psychopath driving, and you're like, I've got nothing. I've got no control. And that's what radical responsibility does. Radical responsibility kicks them out the car. You're now in the car, and you can take the wheel. You can control again.
How about what if you're on cruise control?
Then you just touch the brakes because it turns it off.
That was one of my favorite functions of my Mercedes, cruise control. Very sweet. But you're talking about apologies, right? I did interview a good friend of mine. She's a British Zimbabwean, Moira Abawaje. She wrote the book Mind Capsules, and one of the major things in that book is accepting the apology you never received.
Right.
You need to accept the apologies that you never received in life. Yeah. It does help your mental health.
I think I do you one better. Give yourself the apology you never gave yourself.
I'll communicate this one to her.
So a lot of the time, people are carrying a lot of guilt about what they did. And the guilt is internally driven. And they blame themselves for not making the right decision way back when. And they should have done this and they should have done it. No, man, you made the decisions based on what you had and the resource you had at that time. You couldn't have made another decision. That was the context. That would present itself. That's the decision you made. And they hold a gun to themselves back then, not in a good way. Like, it's your fault, man. Like, it's your fault. You put me in this position. And people talk about the power of forgiveness. And they think that forgiveness is like, oh, I'm giving this person permission to do it again. No, you're giving yourself permission to be free of the pain of putting up with whatever the other person did to you. You're not giving permission to do it again. But most people talk about forgiveness as in other people. and rarely do people ever talk about forgiving themselves. And that's a huge letdown. And it's a massive disservice to yourself.
So, what does it truly mean to trust everyone without getting burnt, and why does it work?
So it means you don't need to protect yourself from people, because you realize fundamentally, let's say over 90% of the population, so excluding psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists, people do not wake up in the morning and go, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to screw Dems over today. That's what I'm going to do. That's my role for today. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm dialed in, baby. I'm good to go. People don't do that.
Every evil weapon fashioned against me shall not prosper.
There are some people, man, I promise you, that they're so concerned about what other people think of themselves, they don't realize that 90% of the population is just as concerned about what other people think about themselves. Like, no one's paying attention to you that much because they're sorting out their own drama. So they get stuck, right? And so when you train yourself to pay attention in the moment to what's going on, to recognize the patterns, how people are showing up, and it's deviating from what happened before, as you calibrate to these patterns, you start to disconnect from calibrating to personality. And so you can start to trust what you can actually see. That means you can act fast. That means you can trust exactly everyone to be exactly who they are, not who you hope they'll be based on who they were when they showed up before. And that keeps you present. And because you're now present with what's going on, you don't get burnt.
Interesting. Wow, it's been quite a deep dive today, and what a time to wrap up. But I will wrap up with 5 quick fire round questions. Before we hit the road on the quick fire round, how can people get your book so that we can add that to the description of the podcast? So, guys, wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon, wherever, just check the description below and you will see what Clay is about to give to you.
So the easiest place to go is trusttrapbook.com. I could give a long-winded thing for the Amazon link, but it's just easier. Just go to the website. If you click there, get the book, it's going to take you straight to Amazon. You can get the book. You'll find out more about me, about the story, everything like that. But that's all the website is designed to do, is to show a central point so that you can get the book if you want.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, I will put that website in the description below. So guys, go check it out and go grab your copy now. So quick fire round. Let's wrap up with rapid fire section. Say what first comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Okay, number 1, book that changed your life.
Matt Riley, Temple. It's a fiction book.
Interesting. 2, biggest lie people tell themselves about trust.
It's just bad luck. I'm just an unlucky person. That's why it keeps happening to me. No, you have shit pattern recognition skills.
Pattern recognition 0.
Exactly.
Okay, one habit that changed everything for you.
Radical acceptance. Absolutely, without any doubt, radically accepting responsibility for everything. And what I mean by that is, like, doesn't mean like I'm responsible for everything. If someone throws a ball at me and smacks me in the head, I'm not responsible for him throwing the ball, right?
You're responsible for me throwing. You're responsible for me throwing this one.
But I am responsible for, like, okay, I put myself in this position, I put it there. And by taking ownership of whatever it is that I'm contributing to that situation, that then allows me to move forward. No pretending I didn't see things, no pretending I'm ignoring things, like taking it on.
Oh, wow. So I see. So the red flag that you can spot instantly.
Just incongruence. When the words do not match the behavior, when the body language is out of sync with the words, it becomes very obvious very quickly that there's something amiss. And like I said, the red flag does not mean that they're trying to screw me over. The red flag is an indicator that just says, pay attention. That's it.
Pay attention. I did not pay attention, but attention paid me about that. Lil Wayne.
There you go.
Okay, complete the sentence. Radical responsibility is dash.
The end of your excuses and the start of your freedom.
And speaking of the end, this is the end of the podcast. Guys, go like, share, subscribe, support the great work that we are doing. And of course, I'll keep working tirelessly to bring, people from the end of the world, from the world down under, and from all around the world, to give you resourceful education, inspiration, motivation, even to buy your nation. Anything that has been Sean, you don't have an option. Just like and share so that we can keep growing. And of course, congratulations to us on 10K subscribers on YouTube. The only way is up. So, Clay, do you have a word of encouragement for the audience or a shout out to anybody before you leave? And please help me beg them to go and subscribe as well.
First of all, 10,000 subscribers, man, is a huge achievement. So you should thank yourself and give yourself a pat on the back. That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
With regards to your listeners, the best thing I can say is, while it can be one of the scariest things to do, to face yourself, confront yourself, and look in that mirror, it's also the single most liberating experience that you'll ever experience when you start down the path. And a lot of people say if you think it's too late, it's not. I disagree. If you think it's too late, then your belief system is telling you that it's too late, so it is. What I'll tell you is that it isn't too late. And if you think it's too late, you are wrong. It is never too late to change the trajectory of your life.
I think I'll just add it, it's better late than never. maybe that is more encouraging. Because, bro, I'm from Nigeria, right? And there's something called Nigerian time. We always go to every event late. And we encourage ourselves. It's better late than never.
That's the point, right? So you, as a byproduct, don't ever think it's too late, which means you've started.
Yeah.
But some people will be thinking it's too late. Oh, this has already happened. I can't. So they're already in the trap.
There's no such thing that's too late for a Nigerian, We operate on Nigerian time, bro. And some people we say Nigeriano they carry last, meaning Nigerians don't ever come last. In any competition, we might not be the first, but we'll never come last, Whoa. Thank you very, very much for your time today. I always say that gratitude is good attitude. And anytime a person shares their time with you, they share their life with you. So thank you for sharing your time and your life with us on the podcast today. God bless you and wishing you the very, very best. And of course, global impact, global influence, and anything you wish for yourself. My regards to the missus and the kids. You guys enjoy it. The world down under. For me, it is. Whoa! You owe me something. You owe me a prediction. I'm gonna catch it on the other side. Bye, guys.